why I'm telling you my story. If someone had told me years ago that I would one day achieve financial freedom, I would have laughed in their face. Not because I didn't want it, but because, at that time, it seemed impossible. I had no money, no connections, and no special talent. All I had were doubts, failures, and sleepless nights, wondering if I would ever escape the cycle of struggling just to survive. But today, I'm living proof that it's possible. Not because I got lucky, not because someone handed me success, but because I made one crucial decision. I chose to believe in myself. And that's why I want to share my story with you. Not to brag, not to make it sound easy, but to show you that if I, someone who started with nothing, could make it, then so can you. But before I tell you how I got here, let me take you back to where it all started. 5 years ago, I was at the lowest point of my life. I had just lost my job, and my small side business had completely failed. I had poured every dollar into it, hoping it would be my breakthrough. But instead, I was left with debt, disappointment, and the crushing feeling that maybe I wasn't meant for success. I remember sitting alone in my tiny apartment, staring at the bills piling up on the table. My bank account was nearly empty, and my landlord had given me an ultimatum: pay up or leave. I had no backup plan, no rich parents to bail me out, no safety net. The worst part, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the feeling that I was stuck in a cycle I couldn't break. That I would never be more than a struggling ordinary guy watching other people succeed while I failed over and over again. And at that moment, I almost gave up, almost. But then something happened that changed everything. That night, I had nowhere to go, so I walked aimlessly through the city streets, lost in thought. It was late and most of the shops were closed, but I stumbled upon a small cafe that was still open. Something about it felt different. Maybe it was the warm glow of the lights or the quiet atmosphere, but I decided to step inside. I ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and sat at a corner table, drowning in my thoughts. That's when I noticed him, an old man sitting across the room, drawing something on a napkin. There was something about him, an energy, a presence, that made it impossible to ignore. He must have noticed me staring because he suddenly looked up, smiled, and walked straight toward me. Without asking, he sat down at my table and placed the napkin in front of me. "Tell me what you see." I looked at the napkin. It was just a messy sketch of random lines and scribbles. Nothing," I said, confused. He chuckled. "Look closer." I squinted, and then, like magic, I saw it. Hidden in the chaos of lines was an image of a phoenix rising from the ashes. "Life is like this drawing," the old man said. "At first, it looks like a mess, full of failures, disappointments, and confusion. But if you keep going, if you refuse to quit, the full picture reveals itself." I stared at him, my mind racing. He leaned in. "The only difference between those who succeed and those who don't is one thing: belief. Not luck, not talent, just belief. The moment you start believing in yourself, truly believing, is the moment your life begins to change." I wanted to believe him. But after everything I had been through, I wasn't sure I could. "How do you know this?" I asked. The old man smiled, stood up, and handed me the napkin. "Because once upon a time, I was you." Then, without another word, he walked out of the cafe and disappeared into the night. I never saw him again, but his words stayed with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what the old man said. Could it really be that simple? Could my life change just by choosing to believe in myself? I didn't have a better plan, so I decided to test his theory. The next morning, I woke up and made a decision. No more self-doubt, no more excuses. If I was going to fail, I would fail moving forward, not standing still. I started small. I picked up a notebook and wrote down every skill I had, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Then I listed out problems people had that I could potentially solve. I realized I had always been good at marketing and understanding how businesses worked, even though I had never made money from it. So I started offering free marketing advice to small business owners, not because I expected anything in return, but because I needed to prove to myself that I had value to offer. Within weeks, one of those business owners saw my potential and offered to pay me. Not much, but enough to get me started. That first payment changed everything, because for the first time, I had proof that I wasn't worthless, that I could make money doing something I was good at. So I kept going. I built my skills, I networked, I learned from every failure instead of running from them. But it wasn't easy. I had months where I barely made anything, times where I questioned myself all over again, days when I wanted to quit, but I didn't. Because every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that old man's words. And within 2 years, I had built a 6-figure marketing agency from scratch. Where I am today now, I no longer worry about money. I live life on my terms. I travel, invest, and help others achieve their own success. But the most important thing I gained wasn't financial freedom. It was the realization that the only thing that ever held me back was me. Looking back, I realized that all those years I spent doubting myself were wasted, because success was never about being the smartest, the most talented, or the luckiest. It was only ever about one thing: believing in myself enough to keep going. So if you're reading this and you feel stuck, lost, or hopeless, I want you to know something. Your story isn't over. You are in the messy middle of your masterpiece. And if you keep going, if you choose to believe in yourself, one day, you'll look back and realize that everything you went through was leading you to something greater. Just like it did for me. If you got value from my story, let me know in the comments. And if you're struggling right now, remember this: you are capable of more than you think. Now go out there and make your dreams happen.